I chose to do a French territory in northern South America called French Guiana. French Guiana was originally taken from the Native Americans by Spain, and that happened in 1496. And it wasn't until 1643 that France came over and finally established a permanent settlement. However, they were driven out by Native Americans. The French returned in 1664, but again was ran out, but this time by the English. The land was given back to the French by the English with the signing of a treaty, and they called it New France. Of the thousands who moved there, only a few hundred ended up surviving that original move, and they ended up moving off the coast of Guyana to 3 little islands. But in 1809, the Portuguese took over, but the Treaty of Paris gave it back to France for a third time. The island ended up being used as a prison, and more specifically, those 3 little islands ended up being used as a prison. It had, what I found was about a 75% death rate. The cells had no ceilings, and there was a lot of tropical viruses that the French just weren't used to. The worst of the islands ended up being called Devil's Island, and it wasn't closed until 1951. Now French Guiana is home to a space center, which was finished in 1968. The people who live there are mostly Roman Catholic, and the most common language actually is not French, it's a form of Creole. In the last few decades, more specifically like since 2000, there's been many protests by people of Guyana to get some more autonomy from France. So, to compare with my own culture, French Guiana has a much higher unemployment rate. Their unemployment rate is about 20%, and they have much less wealth than we do in the United States. However, the temperature is much nicer here. It's currently cold and raining, and their average temperature is about 85 degrees year-round. Even in the winter, it stays warm. They have very nice beaches and what looks like a pretty nice zoo that tourists can visit. They have a few nature reserves that also look really nice, and the people there are regular people. I mean, what I found was that they like to go to the movies and the movie theaters, cafes, bars, clubs. They like to play sports. Not surprisingly, the biggest sport there is soccer. And one thing that I found pretty interesting is that they are not fully financially independent. France still sends them a decent amount of money. So my opinion in French of this project overall and of French Guiana. J'aime bien les subjects. J'aime lire sur l'histoire. Je veux voyager en Guyane français. Je veux visiter Cayenne et aller à la plage.
All right. My part of the project is going to be about the French town of Kaskaskia in modern-day Illinois. The town was named after the Native Americans who once lived there. After them, in 1703, the first French people to settle there were missionaries, which was shortly followed by military, farmers, and settlers. Now, the town was distinguished. At its peak, it had plenty of residential buildings, churches, forts, a post office, and a courthouse. It was a major trading region because it was the largest settlement of its kind in the Midwest. It often traded with New Orleans, keeping it alive with grains when New Orleans couldn't sustain itself with its own agriculture because of hurricanes. They also traded as far out west with the Spaniards in Santa Fe. It grew in size because of the rich minerals and farming land. So it soon actually became the capital of French Louisiana, which not only included modern-day Louisiana and New Orleans, but also extended throughout the Midwest and included Ohio and went as far north as southern Canada. As the town got bigger, its demographics grew as well. The city consisted of Native Americans, Frenchmen, French and Native American families, and unfortunately African Americans also lived there because slavery was unfortunately used in Kaskaskia in the mines and the farms. Later in Kaskaskia's history, they built a stone fort, which you can still see today. I think it's called Fort St. Pierre. It's still in southern Illinois. It's fully refurbished, a tourist destination now. But yeah, as the city grew, it was actually the largest French settlement in French Louisiana, bigger than New Orleans. But why don't we hear about Kaskaskia anymore in the history books? That's probably what you're asking. So Kaskaskia declined in the late 1700s and early 1800s. It was affected by the French and Indian War as well as the American Revolution. Especially after the American Revolution, Kaskaskia originally sided with the Americans because France was allied with America in that war. But as Protestant Americans moved into the town, the Roman Catholic French and Native Americans moved out. They did not get along. At one point, it actually was the capital of Illinois in 1809. But that was short-lived, and shortly after it stopped being the capital, a large flood on the Mississippi River completely destroyed the town. It wiped out all the colonial history. The town is no longer there. Today, there is a town called Kaskaskia that sits near colonial Kaskaskia, but the population is only 21 people. We can kind of compare it to American colonies in our own culture. American colonies, obviously that's where America came from, colonial past, 13 colonies on the East Coast. France was a little bit different. There were way less people living in the French colonies because the French colonies primarily served only as a fur trading business. It was purely financial. People did not settle in French colonies for really any other reason than to make money with the fur trade. So now I'll move on to my French opinions on this project. La vie de Kaskaskia est très intéressante. Pour moi, j'adore l'histoire et je déteste les mathématiques. Alors, ce projet était facile pour moi. Je pense que l'histoire est importante et je pense que c'est amusant aussi. J'adore l'histoire. Mais je suis triste, il n'y a plus de Français dans Illinois, modern Illinois. Oui, merci beaucoup et au revoir.
My French colony was the Fortress of Louisbourg. It is found in Nova Scotia and is now a historic tourist site. It was built in the 18th century and is known for cod fishing. The Fortress of Louisbourg was captured by the British and is now once again owned by the French. Je pense c'est importante pour savoir l'histoire de quoi nous sommes un étudiant. Ça aide à comprendre plus aider dans événements dans des classes. Ça peut aider à future français conversations. And comparing and contrasting, they are all French colonies are known for something specific. In this case, it's cod fishing. And just like in our culture, every state seems to be known for something specific, like how Idaho is known for potatoes or Florida is known for oranges. And then what's different between our culture and the French colonies is they seem to have had a lot more detail in their architecture.
Okay, my colony is St. Martin. St. Martin was founded in the 17th century and it is an island in the Caribbean. It is actually split into 2 separate colonies. So there is a Dutch and a French colony as well. They're each now their own country. There's a carnival every year to celebrate both sides of the island and to unite the people. Like I said, it was founded in the 17th century and it is a big tourist attraction, mainly with all the natural beauty that it has. There is a market on the French side that is just gorgeous. and the beaches are just something that everybody wants to go to as well. My opinion in French, il fait beau, j'aime visiter les Saint-Martin, j'adore les subjects, la culture est très intéressante. It would just be gorgeous to go to St. Martin right now because the average temperature is also 75 to 80 degrees pretty much always. It is in the Caribbean, so it'll always be warm with very few rain showers, which is great compared to Ohio, which was horrible yesterday with 80 degrees one day and then 40 degrees the next. So yeah, thank you.